guys, welcome to Telling the Told and Untold. My name is Tshego. Before we go straight into today's case, I do have a couple of content warnings for you guys. In this video, we do talk about forced termination as well as physical and emotional abuse. So if that's not something you think you're interested in watching, then this video probably isn't for you. So maybe you can watch some of my other videos or just wait for my next upload. On the 7th of October 2020, Brits called the manager of the Pofadder hotel. And this woman was a friend of the Brits family and had known them for many years. When she answered the phone, Srita was hysterical and told her that she had found her husband floating in the pool and he had been murdered. Srita would also make several other phone calls, including to police as well as to her brother-in-law, Toki. She also ran out into the streets and found a neighbor, flagged him down and asked him to please call police and told him that she wasn't sure if there was someone still in the house and that her husband had been shot. Police officers soon arrived at the Brits family home and news spread about Leon Brits' murder. And people in the community then went to the Brits family home and they came with sugar water as well as tranquilizers, just trying to make sure that Srita was okay and just trying to calm her down. Leon Brits, a man who had been a cornerstone for people in the community, was dead. And almost immediately, rumors spread where people posted allegations of farm murders, giving descriptions of people, and claiming that they had seen about 5 people fleeing the Brits family home. Srita Brits, born Srita Kutia, was born on the 6th of September 1990, and she was the youngest of 3 siblings. There were 2 girls and a boy. Unfortunately, in 1999, Srita's father passed away from a spider bite that turned into an infection. Srita was at her dad's bedside when he died, and his death would have such a deep impact on her in many ways. Her mother then became a single mother to these 3 kids, and they really struggled financially. And for most of Srita's childhood, the family did live in poverty. When Srita was 14 years old, she met Leon Brits, who was 25 years old. Leon Brits was born on the 5th of May 1979, and his family were long-term Northern Cape residents, and he and his brother Toki lived in Pofadder, where their family owned a hotel, the Pofadder Hotel. And Leon had always been a shining star. He was the head boy of his high school. He did very well academically and he enjoyed sports. He was also the apple of his mother's eye, and he took on her perfectionist tendencies, which made it a lot easier for him to just do things at the hotel. And it had always just been known that Leon would be the one to take over the Pofadder Hotel once his parents retired, and his brother Toki was very fine with that. He would go on to study something completely different and get married, and once he matriculated, he moved out of Pofadder. Leon Brits was at a social function when he laid eyes on 14-year-old Srita Kutia. Leon was older than Srita by 11 years, and there's just so much to also unpack about that relationship, the age gap, the power dynamics, and there's just a lot. But obviously she was a minor when they met, and according to her, not too long after that, they did start a sexual relationship. Leon would also spend money on Srita. He would buy her all these gifts, and he would also give her family money when they were struggling financially. He would take her out to different restaurants and places that she had never dreamed of, and he was just also showing her this life that she had never believed could ever be hers. Leon's family also says that Leon had fallen head over heels in love with Sarita from the moment that he saw her. Mind you, he was 25 and she was 14 years old. 14. Leon's family would also say that they didn't think that the two of them had engaged in a sexual relationship before Sarita had turned 18. But I think it's also important to remember like the age gap, and also even if it's legally okay for you to sleep with someone, it doesn't make it morally okay. But anyways, they did not think that they had engaged in any sexual intercourse or anything sexually until she turned 18. But this was not the case. When Sarita was just 15 years old, she found out that she was pregnant and she immediately went to go tell Leon. Leon then gave her some money and told her to go confirm with the doctor, but she had to go confirm with the doctor that was not in Pofadder because obviously it's a very small town, news would spread, and he was just trying to avoid that. So Sarita went to this doctor and he confirmed that she was pregnant, but she wasn't just pregnant with one child, she was pregnant with twins. When Sarita told Leon this, he was extremely upset with her. He blamed her for everything and he told her that she had to go have an abortion. And they booked for this procedure to take place, and Leon took her there and he waited outside whilst she went in and she underwent this extremely painful and traumatic procedure. And once she got back into the car, Leon didn't let her rest and he just threatened to harm her if she told anyone, and Sarita would later be diagnosed with PTSD from this event. 3 years later, when Sarita was in grade 12, she was working for Leon at the Pofadder hotel, and once again she did fall pregnant. Leon told her that he wanted her to have another abortion, but because of her experience and just everything that she went through because of that procedure, that's not something that Sarita wanted to do, so she was going to go forward with her pregnancy. And Leon, not too sure how he felt about it because it seemed like he just wasn't ready. He wanted her to not go through with it, but in the end he just decided that he was going to marry her. And it said that Leon's brother and his friends said that Leon had been very unsure about whether marrying Sarita was the right thing to do or not. It's also said that he also had like these specific ideas about what he wanted from his life, his family and a wife, and he just wasn't sure whether Sarita was the best fit for that. But anyways, they did end up going ahead with their marriage, and a couple of months after their wedding, Sarita gave birth to their first child, and it was a girl. Within 2 years, Sarita was pregnant again, and this time she was pregnant with twin boys who she gave birth to at around 28 weeks. By 2009, Sarita had left school and she was now working full-time at the Pofadder Hotel in the kitchen as a waitress as well as a receptionist. And by now it also seemed as though Leon had settled into his role as a father as well as a businessman. At this point, his father had passed away, and he then took his mother's shares. So he was in charge of the hotel, and he had also moved his mother into a retirement village in Pofadder. After the birth of their sons, Leon and Sarita Brits set on to build sort of like an empire for their family. Besides the hotel, Leon also had several other businesses, including 2 rental properties, a bottle store, as well as a self-catering setup that serviced people visiting the mines in the area, and he also bought a farm. Sarita helped him with these businesses, but she had also started her own business, which was just supplying some things to the mines. And Leon helped her start this business, but he really wanted her to be in charge of it and wanted her to run it, and she did run it successfully at that. The two of them also owned two of their own homes, which they split their time in. One was in Pofadder, which was close to the hotel, and the other one was in Marchant, an hour's drive from Pofadder. Sarita and the children would spend the weekdays in Marchant because it was close to the children's school, whilst Leon would stay in Pofadder so that he could look after the Pofadder hotel as well as his other businesses, but they would see each other on most weekends. Unfortunately, in 2017, Sarita's health took a turn for the worst. She was diagnosed with cancer of the womb and she had to have a hysterectomy, and then she was also diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis as well as heart conditions and a wide range of allergies. At some point, she was seeing 4 different specialists who were all based in Joburg, and she would often have to travel to Joburg, and soon they got things under control, so she didn't have to go to Joburg that often, but she would still go to Joburg. And it's also during like this time when she's facing her issues health-wise that her marriage with Leon was a bit different. They didn't see each other during the week anyways, but now with her having to constantly travel to Joburg, they didn't see each other as often. But when the couple was together, people didn't notice that they had any issues in their marriage. They were described as a very beautiful couple when they were together, and they were two attractive people that found each other. And they were also very wealthy. They were like the it couple in their community. Employees at the hotel would also say that Leon was not always happy with the attention that Sarita got, and he also had very specific ideas about how he wanted her to dress and conduct herself. It was also in 2017 when Leon started getting death threats, and he would tell like his friends and family that it really didn't bother him that much, like he really didn't think much of it, and they were probably threatening him or like receiving these death threats because, as I mentioned, he was very wealthy, and on his various properties there was a safe, and in all of these safes he kept a wad of cash, some Krugerrands, as well as some diamonds. And this is basically just how the Brits family would continue their lives for the next few years. There was some point in their marriage when Sarita accused Leon of having had or having been having an affair, and this is because she had seen some photos on his phone and came to this conclusion. Leon denied that he had ever had an affair, and this was something that they kind of spoke about, and eventually they got over it and moved on. But it turned out that even though Sarita had been the one of accusing Leon of having been unfaithful, she herself was unfaithful. Sarita had at least 2 romantic and sexual relationships outside of her marriage. The longest lasting affair started in 2019 when a new supplier started calling on her business, and she met a man, and we're just going to call this man Peter. Sarita and Peter's affair soon became pretty serious, and because during the week she would stay in Marchant and not in Pofadder with her husband, the two of them were able to talk a lot. They would have at least 4 phone calls a day, and they would also text each other throughout the day. Peter had also just gotten out of a toxic marriage, And it said that he lived in Paris, but from what I also read, it's also like he had a house in Joburg, because sometimes when Sarita would go to Joburg for her doctor visits, she would stay with Peter, and this is also when they would see each other. But not only that, when Sarita would go to Joburg, she would not go alone. She would go with both her sister as well as her mother, and they too would also stay in Peter's house. Even though it seemed like Peter and Sarita's relationship was getting pretty serious, Sarita did tell Peter that she was not going to divorce her husband, and she said that she would only leave him once her children had finished school, so that would mean another 8 years of hiding their relationship. However, as the months went on, it did seem as though Sarita had changed her mind, and she did tell Peter that she had raised the question, or like brought it up to Leon about them divorcing, and apparently she told Peter that Leon said that they were never going to get a divorce, and he said that if they do get a divorce, there's only 2 things that could happen, and the first one is that he would kill Sarita and then kill himself, or the second thing is that he was going to make sure that she got nothing and she would be poor. Eventually in 2020, Sarita told Peter that she needed him to do something for him, and she wanted Peter to kill her husband. And as soon as she told Peter this, Peter just thought that she was crazy, and he told her no, like, how could you say that, how could you think of that? And she would continue asking him this, and at first he thought like maybe she was just like joking, or maybe she was angry, and because of this anger that she had towards Leon, she was saying things that she didn't mean. But he wasn't really sure if she was just like joking, or she was just angry and frustrated and just saying things that she didn't mean. But towards the end of 2020, Sarita told Peter that he didn't have to worry about killing her husband anymore, and this is because she had bumped into her brother's friend from high school, and he was willing to help her. The man that Sarita was referring to is Jacques van Vieren, and at the time Jacques was 36 years old, and he was going through a really rough period in his life. His wife had recently divorced him because she said that he was just like drinking too much, and his marijuana use was just too much for her, so she had moved out of the house with their 2 kids. He had also just recently injured himself, and because of this he had lost his job, or his permanent position at the mine, so he he didn't have a stable income. He would do like side jobs here and there, but it wasn't nearly enough to sustain him, as well as be able to pay his monthly child support. He was already 2 months behind on child support, and his wife was threatening him, just telling him that he needed to pay her. There was one night when Jacques was in Marchand and he was at a braai, and this is when he reconnected with Sarita. He had always thought that Sarita was beautiful, but he also saw her as more of a sister than anything else. And him and Sarita grew up together, and they also shared a difficult upbringing. Jacques' father had been an alcoholic, and he had watched his father abuse his mother, physically abuse her on many occasions, and his father had passed away before he had ever worked up the courage to go confront his father about these violent acts. Soon after Jacques and Sarita had reconnected, he received a message from her, and Sarita just asked Jacques if he could do her a favor, and he just jokingly said oh, who do you need me to beat up? And Sarita's reply was very serious, and she told him that she needed him to kill her husband. She then went on to explain that her husband had been both physically and emotionally abusing her for years, and he would not let her leave, and the only way that she would be free is if he was dead. Immediately, Jacques was like very shocked, but then his shock soon turned into anger, and this is because Rita was also playing on his emotions, knowing that he had grown up with such an abusive father and using that to kind of lure him in. And because of this, Jacques agreed to help, but he was very honest and said that he doesn't think that he'd be able to murder Leon, but he would be able to find someone to do it. And Rita said that this was okay. They agreed, and by the end of their conversation, they had agreed on 400,000 rand, and Rita would pay Jacques half of it before the murder, just kind of as like a deposit, and after the murder she would give him the rest. As we know, in 2020 the big C word happened, COVID, and with COVID came lockdown, and because of this everyone was stuck in their homes, and it was no different for the Brits family. Their businesses were closed and they were also under a lot of pressure. One of the Brits' employees, who was a 21-year-old who we'll call Brenda, spent the hard lockdown living with the couple and their children, and she also didn't really have a safe space to go anyways. And it was also during this time that she got really close to Sarita. Within days of receiving confirmation from Jacques that he would help her with killing her husband Leon, Sarita then went to an informal settlement, like kind of like a spaza shop, but like in the informal areas, and she bought a burner phone, and she would use this burner phone to message Jacques. Jacques said that he needed the deposit because he was going to get 2 hitmen from Mafeking, and Sarita said that that was okay, and she made the first payment of 70,000 rand in cash, and then the remainder of that deposit, which was about 130,000 rand. I hope my math is right, it's probably right. She also got that in cash, and then she sent the nanny Brenda to Jacques, and she put this money in kind of like a gift box, and she just told Brenda to go drop it off at Jacques, and she was very cryptic and very weird about it as well. And she told Brenda that if anyone asked her what was in the box or asked any questions, she must just tell them that there's chocolates and like sweets inside for a friend. But Brenda also didn't know that there was money inside of the box when she handed it over to Jacques. Although Jacques did say that he was going to hire 2 strangers from Mafeking to do the murders, or commit the murders rather, he thought it would be better if he involved someone that he knew, just to also make sure that, you know, I think maybe that security of knowing that he knows this person. And this is when he decided to get in contact with someone that he used to work with, who is Heinrich Williams. And he knew that Heinrich was very money driven and he wouldn't say no to a lot of things. The 2 of them had known each other since 2008, and they had also worked in the same mines. And even though Jacques wasn't working at the mines anymore, he would still often see Heinrich. Jacques wouldn't call Heinrich a criminal, but he was the closest thing to it. Even though Heinrich had a full-time job that paid him a good salary and ran 2 other businesses on the side, he was always up for making more money. So it really didn't take much for Jacques to convince him to commit the murder, and especially when Heinrich heard how much Sarita was paying, he was all for it. Jacques was very honest with him and told him that he would not be there for the murders, and he just simply didn't have the stomach for it. And Heinrich also knew that they might need another person, and this is because Leon wasn't a small man. Leon was quite big, and he knew that if he had to take Leon down by himself, he probably wouldn't succeed. This is when Heinrich decided to recruit another young man, and his name is Amantle Beregi, and he was in his early 20s and had just completed his N2 at college. He wanted to study engineering and earn money, but in the meantime he was just raising livestock. Amantle was a bit more skeptical than Heinrich had been, but as soon as he heard how much money was on the table, it didn't really take much to sway him. There was also the added benefit that Sarita wanted the murder to look like a robbery, and she told them that if they broke into the house, they could literally just take anything and everything that they wanted. She also told them that there was a safe and what they could find in the safe. So for them, it was like, okay, she's going to be paying 400,000 rand, and that would be divided between the three of them, which would be Jacques, Heinrich, and Amantle. But there was also the extra money that they could get from breaking into this house and taking whatever that they wanted. In the days of planning, it became very clear that Sarita had really thought out this murder against her husband. She had told Jacques that the men should use unlicensed guns so that it wouldn't be traced back to them, told him that he had used an unlicensed car. They all agreed that Jacques should not be present. He wasn't well known in Pofadder, but he did know some people there, so there was a chance that maybe someone might be able to identify him. Initially, Sarita wanted the murder to happen while both she and the children were in the house. And once Jacques heard this, he immediately said that if that was the case, then he was not going to be involved in the murder, because he thought it was so cruel that Sarita would allow her three young children to be in the house when their father is killed. And as soon as Jacques said that he would pull out if she and the children were in the house, Sarita immediately said, okay, then that's fine. She'd make sure that they weren't home, and then Jacques agreed to continue with the plan to murder Leon Brits. Sarita and Jacques agreed that the murder should take place during the week at the Pofadder house, and this was because there would be a less chance of witnesses and like maybe people just coming to the house. Also, other houses are most likely empty because people are at work, because it is during the week. Sarita also told them that she would try and get Leon alone in the house. She took a video of the entire house so that Heinrich and Amantle could see the layout of the house. She told them where to hide. She said that they should hide behind this big brown couch so that when Leon walked into the house, he wouldn't see them and they would be able to ambush him. The Brits family also had several bull terrier dogs, but Sarita told Amantle and Heinrich, or told Jacques to tell them that the dogs would not be a problem and they were easily distracted, so all they needed to do was just like have like these little sausages, and if the dogs came, just give it a sausage and then the dogs would not bother them. Jacques had agreed that as soon as he received the balance of the deposit, they would carry out the job. And once he got the package from Brenda, Sarita assumed that everything would be in place and that the murder would be carried out. But when that didn't happen, because Jacques just simply hadn't planned everything on time, Sarita called him and she was furious, and she basically told him that he better not try and scam her and take her money, and that if he did decide to do that, that she would find his wife and two children and she would basically just have them killed. And Jacques couldn't believe it, because all this time as we were speaking to Sarita, she always just seemed like this helpless woman who just wanted her husband killed because he was so abusive. And he just couldn't believe that she just switched so much, and she just turned into this evil person who could even threaten having his kids murdered. And as soon as he got that phone call and heard Sarita's threats, he didn't want to take any chances, and then he called Heinrich and Amatle, and they were going to do the murder or go through with the murder as soon as possible. In the hours that followed that phone call, the men gathered what weapons they could find, which was a baseball bat and a knife. Heinrich also bought gloves and lighter fluids to burn their clothes and any other evidence after the crime had been committed. Jacques then texted Sarita to let her know that they were ready to go through with the murders on the 6th of October 2020. However, they couldn't go through with it, and this is because Leon's brother Toki arrived at the house unexpectedly. Normally Toki would just go to the house and visit for a day, but this time he spent the night. So Leon and his brother Toki also had like a lot of investments. They had like their Krugerrands, and often at times Toki would go around the country selling these things and getting money in return, and then he would go to Leon's house and the two brothers would kind of just like split the costs, and then after that Toki would make his way home. But on this specific day, Toki arrived and he decided to spend the night. They also decided to go visit their mother, who was still in a retirement village in Pofadder, and unfortunately by this time she had severe dementia, so it was also just like a very painful time to go see their mother. But at least they got to go see their mother, and then they went home and they had a braai. Usually Leon didn't drink, but on this specific night he decided to have a brandy and coke with his brother, and the two of them just enjoyed each other's company. Unbeknownst to Toki, this would be the last time that he would ever see his brother alive. Early the next morning, Toki made his way back home, and this is something that he kind of looked back on after everything came out, and that was that his sister-in-law kept messaging him, and the two of them do have, or had rather, a decent relationship, but not a kind of relationship where they would constantly text each other back and forth. But on this particular day, on the 7th of October 2020, Sarita just kept messaging him, and she would like ask like, where are you now, did she leave the house yet, what are you doing, like, you know, like just kept constantly messaging him, to the point where he got so annoyed with her that he picked up his phone, sent her a voice note. She just like, stop messaging me, and kind of just threw his phone to the side. And even as Teresa just kept sending him more messages, he just ignored her because he was so tired and fed up. Toki was driving his wife's car, which was a VW Polo, a white one, and he was going to stop halfway before he got home to get, I think, new license discs for his wife's car, as well as fit new tires in. While Sarita was trying to figure out where her brother-in-law was that morning, records would later show that she was simultaneously also using her burner phone to keep Jacques updated. Jacques had left Katu early that morning with Heinrich and Amatle in his silver VW Polo, and they had pulled into a petrol station en route to await Sarita's go-ahead. And then at eventually 6 in the morning, Sarita told Jacques that Leon had left for the hotel, so Heinrich and Amatle could get into the house and just wait for Leon to get home. Just after 6 a.m., Sarita then called Leon and told him that the neighbors had called complaining, saying that their dogs were out on the streets. And this wasn't something that was unusual. There had been previous instances where their dogs had managed to like get out of the gates and be on the streets and just kind of like just terrorize people just walking. So when Leon got this call, it wasn't like a surprise, and then they just waited for Leon to make his way to the house. 3 hours had went by and Leon has still not made his way to the house. Heinrich had not taken his phone, however Amatle did, and it's like Heinrich didn't like warn her maybe about like phones be able to track you and everything like that. So he kind of just told Amatle to just call Jacques and tell him that he was tired of waiting and that Jacques should go pick them up. So he gets this call and then he calls Rita to let him know like, oh, the boys are getting antsy, they're tired, like Leon hasn't arrived. And then Rita just asked him to just hold on, and then she called her husband and she was like to him, the neighbors are still complaining about the dogs, can you please go check and like check if the dogs are back in the yard, or just like go lock them up. And after getting this call, Leon then made his way home, and this was at around 10 to 11 in the morning. Leon's buggy pulled into the driveway and he walked around the back and entered through the sliding door. And as soon as he walked past the two men, they sprang out and attacked him from behind. But things wouldn't go as simply as they thought. Leon fought for his life. He was almost 2 meters tall and weighed significantly more than both of the men, and the struggle inside the house soon led outside of the house as Leon tried to escape. Heinrich then ran behind him and with all his might took the baseball bat and hit Leon. Leon stumbled to the floor, and then the men took out a knife and they stabbed him approximately 7 times, and then they manually strangled him until Leon eventually lost his life. Heinrich then took the keys that he found on Leon, and these were keys for the safe, and then he then told Amatle that he should throw Leon into the swimming pool. Leon then found like a chain that they usually use for their dogs, and he wrapped it around Leon's neck and then dragged him to the pool and just threw him inside, where he would later be found by Sarita. The men then spent several minutes raiding the safe. They took firearms that they could easily conceal, several Krugerrands, a stash of cash as well as diamonds, and then they asked Jacques to come fetch them. A few minutes later, Sarita would get the text that she had been waiting for with just 2 simple words: it's done. With this, Sarita got into a car and she loaded it with paint that Leon had asked her to bring with her to Pofadder, and she slowly started to drive to the house. In the hours that followed, police had arrived on the scene, and Leon's brother Doki had received news that his brother had been murdered. He was still fitting tires for his wife's car, and as soon as he heard the news, which did take a couple of times, because Sarita kept calling him, like after she had found Leon, she tried calling him, and because he was so fed up with her phone calls and messaging, he kept ignoring it until eventually he answered the phone. And then once they had fitted the tires on the car, he turned around and made his way back to Pofadder. He and the hotel manager, who had been the first on the scene after Sarita had called them, would both say that the house seemed very orderly for a robbery, and the only place that really seemed to have been ransacked was the safe, and everything else in the house was still there, and these were things of value, so already it was a bit odd. As one of the last people to have seen Leon alive, Toki was immediately taken to the police station and they interviewed him, and it was clear that police officers had done their research. And it also seemed as the police officers weren't just interviewing him for information that would help them find Leon's killer, but it seemed like they thought that he was the killer. In the weeks and months that followed, it became very clear that Toki was the #1 suspect. Police officers had even told him that they had heard that he and Leon had gotten into a fight about an inheritance, and how they had heard that sometimes Toki would go to the Pofadder house, and the next day or once he left, they would notice that things of value would be missing. Toki was horrified to say the least, and soon members of the community were convinced that he had killed his brother. Then there was a man in Pofadder, Rian, and Rian has like CCTV cameras all over the town. So he wanted to be helpful, so he told police officers that he was going to go through the CCTV footage and just see if he can find anything that might give them a clue or like direction to where they must look or who might have killed Leon. And after Toki heard this, he immediately went to Rian's officer so that he could sit down and watch the footage with him to also kind of prove to police, like, look, I left at this time, he was found at this time, it couldn't have been me. But he was basically just like dragged out, and they were just like, no, you can't see the footage. Sarita though was allowed to see the footage, so she sat down next to Rian as he combed through the CCTV footage. He then saw a silver VW Polo pulling up in front of the Brits family home, and then he saw two men getting out of the car and then the car leaving, and then a couple of hours later the car coming back and the two men getting into the car and it's driving off. After he saw this car, he tried to just kind of like trace its movements in Pofadder, and then he saw that the owner of this car, after he had dropped off the two at the Brits family home, this person had went to a nearby garage where he bought a cold drink and then left. And after this, Rita asked for copies of the footage, and she also kind of just like fell into her hands, almost as though she was in disbelief. And Rian thought that maybe she was overwhelmed with seeing her husband's murderers on the CCTV footage, but in fact she was horrified because she knew that Jacques had probably been caught. Shortly after seeing the CCTV footage, Sarita sent Jacques a message telling him that his car had been seen on CCTV footage, and immediately Jacques panicked. Firstly, because he had also gone against Sarita's instructions that he should not be in Pofadder. Not only that, she had also told him that they should use unlicensed guns, but the men had used like baseball bats and a knife, so they just really didn't pay attention to what she had told them to do. Sarita tried to reassure Jacques that the CCTV footage was in high resolution, so they couldn't even see him clearly or even see like his number plate, but she did tell him to lay low. And this is when Jacques told her that she had to get rid of her burner phone. So the two of them kind of met up for the last time, and when they met up, Amatle and Heinrich were in the back of Jacques' car. And mind you, up until this point, Rita really didn't know who Jacques had hired, she didn't know their names, and she hadn't seen them. And when she tried to kind of like look into the car out of curiosity, the two men kind of just like hid their faces. Jacques then took the burner phone and got rid of it. It was also in the weeks after her husband's murder that Sarita took to social media. It was on Facebook, and she posted about her husband and just how she would love him forever and be in his heart, or he would be in her heart forever. I'll put the post up and you guys can pause so you can read it. But yeah, I think afterwards, in hindsight, it was very interesting that she posted that, knowing that she had been the one to orchestrate his murder. As the investigation continued, Toki just became very suspicious of his sister-in-law. He knew that his brother's murder simply did not add up, and her behavior after his death just made his skin crawl. After breaking the news to their children that their father was dead, Sarita Brits seemed to transform overnight. Neighbors reported having heard loud music from parties in their merchant home. Sarita started riding around in a motorcycle. She got a tattoo. She was wearing like shorts and like sleeveless tops, things that Leon would not approve of, almost as though she had kind of just been set free and she was able to do the things that she wanted to, and she didn't have this person telling her that she can't do it anymore. Sarita also made several statements to police, and she told them that her and her husband had a perfect marriage. She said that they argued like any other couple and had their issues, but nothing that was really to write home about. And things kind of took a turn for the worst in terms of their businesses and just getting money, because Sarita was the executor of Leon's will. However, due to the circumstances of his death, someone else would be the executor of the will, and everything that was written on the will would not be able to happen or like take place until everything regarding his murder had been resolved. And because of this, Rita then found herself being in charge of all of his businesses, and she was extremely overwhelmed and just overworked. It was also around this time that Sarita started getting threatening messages, and she immediately went to police and she told police that she believed it was her husband's murderers, and they were just like threatening her because they wanted money. And that was true. It was her husband's murderers that were sending her threatening messages saying that they wanted money, but it was because she still owed them the balance. She promised Jacques 400,000 rand, and up until this point she had only managed to give him 200,000. She had told Jacques that she wouldn't be able to withdraw the money because she just wanted to keep a low profile, and if she withdrew so much money, police would kind of like side-eye her and it would raise some red flags. After receiving these threatening messages, Sarita then hired 2 bodyguards, but eventually she would fire one and keep just the other. And her relationship with this bodyguard also seemed to be very interesting. Nothing has ever been like really confirmed, but it is said that this bodyguard was seen like he never left the house. He started sleeping in the house. He would also reprimand the children like they were his. Sarita and him would call each other pet names, and he really stood beside her, and it was quite evident that maybe a relationship between the two had blossomed. Leon's brother Toki also started receiving threatening messages, and they basically just were messages threatening his family and saying that he should stop digging into Leon's murder. And even though it has never been proved, it is highly believed that Sarita was behind these messages. Sarita would also convince people that Toki was Leon's murderer, and she also told people that she believed that Toki was trying to take over his mother's finances and just basically steal it from her because she did have dementia, and obviously she just wasn't in the right state of mind to be in charge or like really aware of those things. So when Toki received the threats towards his family, to his mother, his wife, his children, he immediately decided to move his mother to a different retirement village. And because he did this, it kind of also fed into people's idea or their thoughts that he was trying to steal his mother's money, and that's exactly what Sarita wanted. It just made him seem more guilty. And because Toki and Leon's mother had an advanced stage of dementia, she was never told of her son's death, and even though she did attend his funeral, she didn't really know who people were mourning. While Sarita was busy scheming, Jacques van Vuuren was struggling, to say the least. In the days after the murders, he just fell into a deeper depression. He had stopped driving his silver VW Polo. He had just dropped it off at a friend's, and he just felt really, really guilty. And because of this, he decided to go visit his sister in Ceres, which is about a 6-hour drive. So he hopped onto his motorcycle and went to go see his sister. Once he saw his sister, she immediately knew that there was just something off and something wrong with her brother, but she just really couldn't pinpoint what it was. In the meantime, the police's investigation escalated, and the home invasion and employee involvement theories had soon been discarded, and the detective who was put in charge of the case really thought that Toki was a strong suspect, but he just wasn't ready to close all the other doors. And after he saw the VW Polo on the CCTV footage, his theory that Toki was the murderer kind of increased, because it was the same car. It's just that one was silver, one was white. CCTV footage, it's not that clear. But he was also suspicious of other people, and he knew that Leon's murder was personal, but he was just trying to figure out which personal connection in his life that was. Jacques' first night at his sister's place in Ceres, he unfortunately crashed his motorcycle, and it was extremely bad, and he suffered some serious injuries, but he was going to be okay. His bike, on the other hand, was not. It was basically just written off. And then on the second night with his sister, Jacques couldn't take it any longer, and he told his sister everything. After Jacques' sister's initial shock, she kind of took action, and she told Jacques that he had to hand over himself to the police. But before that, she said that he had to tell their mother everything, and then he had to go back to Pofadder, and he was going to see an attorney, and after having seen that attorney, he would go to the police and hand himself over. And Jacques was so relieved to have been able to tell his sister everything, and he was going to do just that. And then the next day, he and his sister went to the bus stop, and he was getting ready to go onto the bus and go consult with a lawyer and then go hand himself over to police. Unfortunately for Jacques, the police were already on his tail, and they had kind of figured out that he was involved in Leon's murder. So as he was about to climb onto the bus, police surrounded him, and then he was arrested for the murder of Leon Brits. I'm not too sure how police officers got the name Jacques van Vuuren, but they had received that name, and then after that they had received a tip-off that Jacques was in Ceres. So once police officers got this name, they did some digging into him, and they discovered that he knew the Coetzee family, which is Sarita's maiden name, Sarita Coetzee, and then he looked into it. He's like, okay, he knows the Coetzee family, which means that he most likely knows the Brits family. And after this, they went to go find him. At first, the police were only asking him about the two men that he had dropped off, and the detective was still unconvinced of this theory that Jacques knew the Brits family and knew that they had money, so he just broke into it. For him, it seemed like there was still more to it. And then the detective's suspicions were confirmed when Jacques told him about Heinrich and also told him who the mastermind was. And this is when the detective's theory was confirmed, or suspicions. And then Jacques van Vuuren entered into a plea deal with the state. He provided a full confession and pointed out all the pertinent scenes, and he also agreed to plead guilty. In exchange for this, Jacques van Vieren would receive a sentence of 25 years with 5 years suspended, and he would then have the opportunity for parole far earlier than he would have received if he had received a life sentence. As part of the deal, he would also testify against his co-accused, Heinrich Williams, as well as Amandla Bereki, and of course, the mastermind behind Leon Brits' murder, Sarita Brits. It seemed as though Sarita Brits had expected her arrest. She had already had a full-time carer for her children and laid out instructions for their care. She had also placed all of their businesses on hold, and all the assets were in her name. Heinrich Williams was arrested the day after Jacques van Vieren was taken into custody, and at first he denied his involvement in Leon Brits' murder and told him that Jacques had asked him to participate, but he turned it down. And then he claimed that it had been Jacques and Amandla who had killed Leon. He provided police officers with Amandla's address, but by the time they got there, he had already fled to Mafeking, and it would take them a couple of weeks for them to track him down and finally arrest him too. 5 months after Leon Brits' murder, on the 19th of March 2021, police officers surrounded the Brits family home, and there were 5 cars, and Sarita Brits was arrested for the murder of her husband. And Leon Brits' family was horrified. They were all convinced that Doki had been involved in Leon's murder, and they didn't think that Sarita was guilty. And because of this, they also stood by her for the next couple of months. With Jacques' testimony, police could use cell phone records to link Sarita to Jacques and Jacques to Heinrich and Amandla. And when Sarita was arrested, Brenda, the kid's nanny, also came forward and told police about the package that she had given Jacques. Other people had also come forward, including Sarita's boyfriend Peter, telling police officers about how she said that she wanted her husband murdered and how she found someone to commit the murders. And with all this overwhelming evidence, they knew they had a strong case against Sarita. And Leon's family still didn't believe it, and they still continued standing beside her. Everyone applied for bail except for Jacques, and both Amandla and Heinrich received bail, but Sarita did not. She would appeal this decision, and again she was denied bail, and she kind of came to this realization that things were very tough for her. It also came out that during the entire investigation she had hired a PI, and it turned out that she had hired this PI just to get more information about what police officers knew and not to try and find her husband's murderer, because obviously that would be her. She then told her PI that she wanted to hire Barry LaRue, and he's most famously known for being Oscar Pistorius's attorney. And then Barry told her that he does not defend liars, so she must be honest. And after this, she decided to plead guilty, and she entered into a plea deal with the state as well. After her sentencing, Sarita would write a long letter to Huisgenoot, a magazine, and in it she detailed the abuse that she suffered at the hands of her husband Leon, and reiterated that she understood what she had done was not right and called it the worst mistake of her life. Her family continued to stand by her, and she also kept in contact with her PI. She says her children have also forgiven her, and that's the most important thing for her. Sarita Brits pleaded guilty to 1 count of murder and 1 count of robbery with aggravated circumstances. She was then sentenced to 25 years for murder and 15 years for robbery, which will run concurrently. Heinrich and Amatle would also go to trial, and their defense teams would do their best to defend against the evidence before them, but with their alibis failing them, cell phone records linking them, and Jacques and Suriti's testimony, and the mountains of circumstantial evidence, there was very little even the best defense lawyers could do. And because of this, Amatle Bereki, who was 25 years old, and Heinrich Williams, who was 35 years old, were both charged with murder and aggravated robbery. They were both found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. In 2023, videos of Sarita and Cecilia Steyn were seen all over social media, and if you don't remember, Cecilia Steyn is from Devilsdorp. She was the cult leader, and it was just very interesting. Some people think that they are together, and their families deny that they are in a relationship. And that's it for today's case. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it was a long one, so thank you. And yeah, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps out my channel a lot, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.